Picture this. A gorge so deep and so treacherous that for centuries, people could only cross it by descending into its depths and climbing back out the other side. The Avon Gorge in Bristol, England. A natural barrier that had defeated engineers and dreamers for generations. And then came a 24-year-old nobody with an audacious plan that everyone said would never work. His name was Isambard Kingdom Brunel, and he was about to propose something that would either make him a legend or destroy his career before it even began. The year was 1829, and Bristol desperately needed a solution. This wasn't just about convenience. The city's economy was being strangled by geography. While rival cities were thriving with new infrastructure and expanding trade, Bristol was stuck watching opportunities slip away because crossing the gorge was an ordeal that took hours. Merchants were frustrated. The city council was under pressure. Something had to change. So they announced a competition. Design a bridge across the Avon Gorge. Simple enough, right? Except this gorge was like nothing else. We're talking about a chasm that drops over 200 feet straight down to the River Avon below, with a span that would need to stretch over 700 feet across. To put that in perspective, no bridge in Britain had ever been built with a span even close to that length. The engineering challenges were staggering. The winds that whipped through the gorge could tear structures apart. The rock faces on either side were unstable, and the sheer height meant that any mistake, any miscalculation, would be catastrophic. 22 designs were submitted. Some were conservative and boring. Others were wildly impractical fantasies that ignored basic physics. The judges couldn't decide on a winner, so they brought in the most famous engineer in Britain to settle the matter. Thomas Telford, the man who had built the Menai Suspension Bridge in Wales, which at the time was considered the greatest engineering achievement of the age. Telford looked at all 22 designs and rejected every single one of them. Then he submitted his own design. And it was ridiculous. Telford proposed a suspension bridge, yes, but one so over-engineered and cautious that it would have required massive stone towers rising from the bottom of the gorge itself, with the bridge deck suspended from chains hung between them. The cost would have been astronomical. The construction time would have stretched on for decades. It was the design of a man who had grown afraid of taking risks, who had let his past success make him overly cautious. But there was one young engineer who wasn't ready to give up. Brunel had submitted a design that Telford had dismissed along with all the others. And Brunel's design was the opposite of Telford's. It was bold. It was elegant. It was terrifying in its ambition. Instead of building towers from the gorge floor, Brunel proposed anchoring the bridge directly to the cliff tops on either side. The towers would be tall and slender, Egyptian in style, rising from the very edge of the precipice. The bridge deck would hang from iron chains in a graceful curve, suspended in mid-air with nothing but empty space below. Critics said it would collapse under its own weight. They said the winds would shake it apart. They said the rock couldn't hold the enormous tension from the chains. They said Brunel was a reckless dreamer with no real experience. And they had a point. Brunel had never built a major bridge before. He had never even built a minor bridge before. His father was a famous engineer, sure. But the son? The son was untested. But Brunel had something the critics didn't. He had vision. He had done the mathematics. He had studied the geology. He had calculated the forces and the stresses and the loads. And he knew his design would work. More than that, he knew it would be beautiful. Because for Brunel, engineering wasn't just about function. It was about creating something that would inspire, something that would stand as a testament to human ingenuity and courage. The committee reconsidered. They looked at Telford's design with its massive cost and long timeline. They looked at Brunel's design with its elegance and efficiency. And in 1831, they made their choice. They chose Brunel. The 24-year-old unknown was given the chance to build his impossible bridge. Except there was a problem. Actually, there were many problems. The first was money. The project needed £30,000 to get started. And while some funds had been raised, it wasn't nearly enough. Construction began anyway in 1831 with a grand ceremony. Brunel himself was lowered in a basket down the side of the gorge to place an iron bar in the rock face, marking where the first support would go. Crowds cheered. Newspapers celebrated. Bristol's impossible bridge was finally becoming real. And then everything fell apart. The Bristol riots erupted in 1831, triggered by political tensions over electoral reform. The city descended into chaos. Buildings burned. People died. And in the aftermath, investors got cold feet. Money that had been promised disappeared. Construction ground to a halt. The iron bar that Brunel had placed with such ceremony remained alone on the cliff face, a lonely monument to a dream deferred. Years passed. Brunel moved on to other projects. He designed steamships that revolutionized ocean travel. He built railway lines that connected Britain in ways previously unimaginable. He became famous, respected, exactly the kind of engineer people said he would never be. the Great Western Railway, the SS Great Britain, the SS Great Eastern, each project more ambitious than the last, each one cementing his reputation as the most innovative engineer of his generation. But the bridge haunted him. His bridge, the one that would span the Avon Gorge, the one that everyone said was impossible. It sat unfinished, mocking him every time he thought about it. Occasional attempts were made to restart construction. A bit of money would be raised, a few stones would be laid, and then the funds would dry up again. The project became a joke in some circles. Brunel's folly, the bridge that would never be. Here's what made it worse. Brunel kept refining the design. He couldn't help himself. Every few years he would revisit the plans, make adjustments based on new techniques he had learned, new materials that had become available. The Egyptian towers in his original design gave way to a more Gothic style, then shifted again to something simpler and more industrial. The chains were recalculated. The deck was redesigned. The bridge evolved on paper while remaining frozen in reality. And Brunel kept aging. The young firebrand of 24 became a tired man in his 50s. The endless work on his other projects took a toll. He smoked cigars constantly, worked 18-hour days, barely slept. His health deteriorated. Friends worried about him. Doctors warned him to slow down. He ignored them all. There was always another project, another challenge, another impossible thing that needed building. By 1859, Brunel was dying. Kidney disease, they said, though it was probably a combination of exhaustion and the cumulative damage of decades of stress. He knew the end was coming. And he knew his bridge, the one that started it all, the one that should have been his masterpiece, was still just a dream. The ironwork had been partially erected back in the 1840s during one brief flush of funding, but it stood incomplete, rusting slowly above the gorge. On September 15, 1859, Isambard Kingdom Brunel died. He was 53 years old. He never saw his bridge completed. Now here's where the story takes a turn that Brunel himself could never have predicted. Because sometimes, the greatest tribute to a visionary isn't a statue or a plaque. It's finishing what they started. And the engineering community of Britain was not about to let Brunel's masterpiece remain a rusting skeleton above the Avon Gorge. Within months of his death, two of Brunel's closest colleagues, John Hawkshaw and William Henry Bullough, stepped forward with a proposal. They would complete the Clifton Suspension Bridge, not as some modernized reimagining, but as faithfully to Brunel's vision as possible. It would be a memorial, yes, but more than that, it would be proof that his design had been right all along. That the young engineer who everyone had doubted had actually solved a problem that had stumped an entire generation. But there was still the question of money. The project had been starved of funds for 3 decades. Why would investors suddenly open their wallets now? The answer came from an unexpected place. The Hungerford Suspension Bridge in London, which Brunel had also designed, was being demolished to make way for a railway bridge. And it had chains. Massive wrought iron chains that had been holding up a bridge deck over the Thames. Chains that were still perfectly good and could be reproposed. Hawkshaw and Barlow acquired those chains. Brunel's chains from another of his bridges would now complete his most famous one. There's a poetry to that which is almost too perfect. The materials from one of his successes would enable the completion of his supposed failure. And suddenly, the project became financially viable again. The most expensive component, the chains themselves, was now essentially free. Construction restarted in 1862, and this time it didn't stop. Workers returned to the site that had sat dormant for so long. The towers that had been partially built decades earlier were inspected, reinforced, and completed. The Gothic design that Brunel had settled on in his later revisions began to take shape. 3 massive stone arches on each tower, rising over 80 feet above the cliff tops, strong enough to anchor the enormous tension from the chains, beautiful enough to inspire awe in everyone who saw them. The engineering challenges that had terrified critics back in 1831 were now being solved one by one. The chains were stretched across the gorge in a process that required meticulous precision. Too much tension and they could snap. Too little and the bridge would sag dangerously. Each link had to be perfect. Each connection had to be tested and retested. The workers were literally suspended above a 200-foot drop, working with equipment that by modern standards would be considered insanely dangerous. One mistake meant death. And mistakes happened. Not fatal ones, thankfully, but close calls that reminded everyone involved just how audacious this project really was. A chain slipped during installation and swung wildly before being brought back under control. High winds on several occasions forced work to stop because the partially completed structure was swaying too much. The rock face on one side showed signs of instability and required additional reinforcement that hadn't been in the original plans. But the work continued. Month by month, the bridge grew. The deck was constructed from timber planks laid across iron girders, creating a roadway that would allow carriages and pedestrians to cross. Railings were installed. Gas lamps were mounted to allow for nighttime crossing, though many locals swore they would never set foot on the bridge after dark, convinced it would collapse under the additional weight of the lamp fixtures. That's how fragile people still believed it to be. The engineers knew better. They had run the calculations dozens of times. They had tested the materials beyond what would ever be required in actual use. They had accounted for wind loads, for the weight of traffic, for temperature fluctuations that would cause the metal to expand and contract. This bridge wasn't going to fail. It was over-engineered, if anything, because Hawkshaw and Barlow were determined that nothing would go wrong. They owed that much to Brunel. As the completion date approached, excitement in Bristol reached a fever pitch. This wasn't just a bridge anymore. It was a symbol of perseverance, of faith in human ingenuity, of the power of seeing a vision through to the end no matter how long it takes. The people who had watched the project languish for 3 decades were finally going to see it finished. The investors who had lost money back in the 1830s were, if they were still alive, going to be vindicated. And Brunel, lying in his grave, was going to have his masterpiece. December 8, 1864. Opening day. Thousands of people gathered on both sides of the gorge. Brass bands played. Dignitaries gave speeches about Brunel's genius and the triumph of British engineering. And then, for the first time, people walked across the Clifton Suspension Bridge. 702 feet of empty air beneath their feet, held up by nothing but chains and mathematics and the vision of a man who had died 5 years earlier. It didn't collapse. It didn't even sway noticeably. It just stood there, solid and magnificent, doing exactly what Brunel had promised it would do 33 years earlier. The critics who had said it was impossible were silent. The engineers who had doubted the design were forced to admit they had been wrong, and Bristol finally had its crossing. But here's the thing that makes this story even more remarkable. The Clifton Suspension Bridge wasn't just a success on opening day. It's still standing, still in use, still carrying traffic across the Avon Gorge more than a century and a half later. Think about that for a moment. A bridge designed in 1829 with mathematical tools that would be considered primitive by modern standards, built with materials and techniques from the 1860s. And it's still doing its job perfectly well in the 21st century. Over 4 million vehicles cross it every year. Pedestrians stroll across it daily, stopping to take photographs of the stunning views up and down the gorge. It's become one of the most iconic landmarks in Britain, instantly recognizable, a symbol of Bristol itself. And it stands as a testament not just to Brunel's genius, but to the timelessness of good engineering principles properly applied. Of course, it hasn't been entirely maintenance-free. The bridge has been strengthened and refurbished multiple times over the decades. The original timber deck was replaced with a lighter steel version. The chains have been inspected and repaired countless times. Modern safety features have been added that Brunel never imagined would be necessary. But the fundamental design, the core of what makes the bridge work, remains exactly as Brunel conceived it. There have been close calls. In 1885, a massive storm with winds that exceeded anything the designers had anticipated hit Bristol. The bridge swayed dramatically, and people were certain it was about to tear itself apart. It didn't. In the 1970s, engineers conducting a routine inspection found stress fractures in some of the ironwork and briefly considered whether the bridge might need to be closed permanently. It wasn't. Every time someone has predicted the bridge's imminent failure, it has proven them wrong. And perhaps that's fitting, because this bridge has always been about proving doubters wrong. From the moment Brunel first proposed it, people said it couldn't be done. When construction stalled, they said it would never be finished. When Brunel died, they said his design would die with him. And the bridge just kept defying expectations, kept standing, kept serving its purpose. There's a plaque on the bridge now, installed by the Institution of Civil Engineers, that reads, "Suspension Bridge thrown across the Avon at Clifton, designed by I.K. Brunel and completed as a memorial to him." Thrown across. That's the word they chose. As if Brunel had casually tossed this massive structure over the gorge like it was nothing. There's a confidence in that phrasing that Brunel himself would have appreciated. But the story of the Clifton Suspension Bridge isn't just about engineering triumph and vindication. It's about what happens when a structure becomes woven into the fabric of a community's identity. Because over the past 160 years, this bridge has witnessed everything. It's seen wars and peace, prosperity and depression, technological revolution and social upheaval. And through it all, it's remained constant, a fixed point in a changing world. During World War II, there were genuine fears that German bombers would target the bridge. It was, after all, a vital piece of infrastructure and an obvious landmark that enemy pilots could use for navigation. Plans were drawn up for its potential demolition, the idea being that it would be better to destroy it themselves than let it fall into enemy hands or be used to facilitate an invasion. Thankfully, those plans never had to be executed. The bridge survived the war intact, though locals reported hearing the sounds of bombers overhead and wondering each time if this would be the night it came down. In the decades that followed, the bridge became a magnet for daredevils and thrill-seekers. People have bungee jumped from it, though not legally. Others have attempted tightrope walks across the chains. In 1957, a pilot flew a fighter jet under the bridge on a dare, an act of spectacular stupidity that somehow didn't end in disaster but did result in his court-martial. The bridge has this effect on people. It makes them want to test themselves against it, to prove they're as brave as the engineers who built it. But there's a darker side to the bridge's history that needs to be acknowledged. Its height and accessibility have made it a location for suicide attempts. Hundreds of people over the years have jumped from the bridge, and most have not survived the fall. This is a tragedy that the bridge's operators have struggled with for generations. Barriers have been installed, crisis phones have been placed at both ends, patrols monitor the bridge regularly. But the bridge remains a place where desperate people sometimes make final decisions. It's a sobering reminder that structures, no matter how beautiful or historically significant, exist in the real world where human suffering is a constant. The same height that makes the bridge an engineering marvel also makes it dangerous. Brunel designed it to span a gorge, not to prevent tragedy. And there's only so much that can be done to retrofit safety measures onto a Victorian structure without fundamentally changing its character. It's a difficult balance, and one that continues to challenge those responsible for the bridge's operation. Yet for all the darkness, the bridge remains primarily a symbol of hope and human achievement. It's a place where proposals happen, where photographers gather at sunset to capture the perfect shot, where tourists from around the world come to marvel at what 19th century engineering could accomplish. On any given day, you'll find people standing at its center, looking down at the River Avon far below, trying to comprehend the audacity of what they are standing on. The bridge has also become a cultural touchstone in ways that extend far beyond Bristol. It appears in films and television shows as a shorthand for British engineering excellence. It's been featured on stamps and currency. Artists have painted it thousands of times, each trying to capture something different about it. Writers reference it as a metaphor for bridging impossible divides. It's transcended its function as mere infrastructure to become something more symbolic, something that represents the very idea of overcoming obstacles through intelligence and determination. And here's what's truly remarkable. When you look at the Clifton Suspension Bridge today, it doesn't feel outdated or quaint. Modern suspension bridges are certainly longer and can carry heavier loads, but they don't possess the same elegance. There's something about Brunel's design, with its balanced proportions and careful attention to aesthetic detail, that feels timeless. He understood that engineering isn't just about solving problems. It's about creating solutions that uplift the human spirit. The bridge has required constant care, of course. A dedicated team monitors it continuously, checking for signs of stress or deterioration. The costs of maintenance are substantial, running into millions of pounds over the decades. But the bridge pays for itself through tolls, and has done so since the day it opened. It's a rare example of a public infrastructure project that has been financially self-sustaining for over a century and a half. Brunel would have appreciated that practical detail. In recent years, the bridge has undergone its most extensive renovation yet. LED lighting has been installed that can illuminate the entire structure in different colors for special occasions. The visitor center has been expanded to tell the story of the bridge's construction in greater detail. Advanced monitoring systems track every vibration, every stress point, ensuring that any potential problems are identified before they become serious. The bridge is being prepared to serve Bristol for another 160 years. But perhaps the most important thing about the Clifton Suspension Bridge is what it represents for anyone who has ever been told their dreams are impossible. Brunel was 24 when he designed it. 24. An age when most people are still figuring out what they want to do with their lives. He proposed something that the greatest engineer in Britain said couldn't be done. He fought for his vision through riots, financial collapse, and decades of delay. He died before seeing it completed. And still, his bridge stands. That's the lesson here. Not that one person's vision can change the world, though that's part of it, but that good ideas, properly executed, can outlive their creators by centuries. That mathematics and physics don't care about your age or your reputation. That sometimes the youngest person in the room is the one with the right answer, and that patience, persistence, and faith in your own calculations can overcome obstacles that seem insurmountable. Every time someone crosses the Clifton Suspension Bridge, whether they realize it or not, they are participating in a conversation that started in 1829. They are proving Brunel right. They are demonstrating that his mathematics was sound, his materials were adequate, his vision was achievable. The bridge is his argument, made in stone and iron and chain, and it's an argument that has won every single day for over a century and a half. So the next time you hear someone say something can't be done, remember the young engineer standing at the edge of the Avon Gorge, looking across at an impossible distance and seeing not an obstacle but an opportunity. Remember the decades of setbacks and the final triumph. Remember that the impossible is often just the difficult viewed by people who lack imagination. The Clifton Suspension Bridge stands today as proof that Brunel was right to ignore his critics. And if you found this story as fascinating as we hope you did, share it with someone who needs to hear about persistence in the face of doubt. Drop a comment telling us about other engineering marvels that seemed impossible in their time. And subscribe, because history is full of stories about people who refuse to accept the word impossible, and we'll keep bringing them to you. The bridge connects two sides of a gorge, but stories like this connect us to the dreamers and builders who came before us, reminding us what humans are capable of when we dare to envision something greater.